Now, our next speaker, you're going to be part of API Days history, people that are here. We're going to have an online speaker come on through the screen, and some people on site too. So give us 2 seconds while we set this up, but essentially it is a talk from APIwiz, and we're waiting for the CEO and co-founder of APIwiz to join us online. And we've got David helping us here from the front too.
I have them online.
Okay.
All right, let me get this plugged in.
This is really pushing the boundaries of technology, guys.
HDMI won't have sound, is that right?
Yeah, we can't send it through to our system. Just double check your sound settings to make sure it's coming through your headphone output.
Yeah, I think that is. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, look at that. Fantastic, okay. I might take myself off there, if I can. Oh. Okay, Rakshith, you're on the big screen. 2 big screens, actually, like Big Brother. Say hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We can hear you loud and clear. And do we also have the presentation as well, or is that, can we dual wield with the presentation? Or we have to swap from one to the other? Unless I do it straight from the laptop. Okay, let me try that.
This is what we call as breaking new grounds. This is increasing the API Days maturity model.
Okay. Oh. I think because I'm presenting.
Oh, you want me to present? I'm happy to help you.
You might have to present. So you've got full control, Rakshith.
That's a dangerous statement.
Well, look, while Rakshith is getting that up, welcome, guys, and thanks for coming along. I know it's an afternoon, you've had lunch, you're probably feeling a little bit tired, and you know, that the weight's sitting heavily in the guts, but hopefully we can wake you up. Hopefully we can give you a good presentation. So we're going to give you the good, the better and the best on API programs, or accelerate business innovation by improving API program maturity. So we'll go to the next slide, Rakshith, and we'll do a few introductions as well. So my name's David Freeman. I'm head of Sonrai Consulting, a small consulting company here based in Melbourne, and our 100% focus is on API programs. I've ran quite a number of API programs now and helped businesses with API programs, and we'll be giving a couple of case studies on API programs throughout the talk. And I'll hand over to Rakshith now.
Like David introduced, my name is Rakshith Rao, popularly known as Rak, just to make sure it's easier for everyone. So I'm co-founder and CEO at APIwiz. As an organization, we predominantly focus on helping organizations manage their APIs at scale through a low-code API DevOps platform. So, like David introduced, we thought of sharing with you some insights. And before we dug right in, popularly numbers definitely wake people up. So we thought maybe this could be a good way to get started. Obviously, over the years, over the last decade, we have seen every organization adopt digital in all form and shape. Like everybody said, we need a website, we need an app. Now every organization has an API, whether it's used internally or externally. And we looked at some stats to make sure that both David and me were not talking in air. To looking at some of the popular research reports from both Google, Capgemini, and a few others, what stood out predominantly in each of those was over the years, the rate at which organizations are leveraging digital capabilities is doubling, or if not at least having a 40-50% growth year on year. And maybe as a direct correlation, then we started looking at organizations which have gone down the path of getting better leverage from their ecosystem. APIs seem to play a significant role in their overall growth. And 11x growth was attributed to organizations which leverage APIs as enabling or fueling their innovation across the organization. And when we look at this, we thought, while we all know about various API programs and organizations and businesses which have been built prominently on APIs, it's quite staggering to know that the valuation of the companies all put together crosses a 1.5 trillion mark. And that is a fairly large number that cannot be ignored any further. While we have all seen the Twilios, the Strides, and other organizations that are predominantly built as API first, just take an example of Netlify, which has radically changed the way we look at how innovation is perceived. Without having to worry about infrastructure, spinning up machines, or taking care of global CDNs and DevOps and everything else, Netlify has just radically simplified how we build engaging customer experiences through mobile applications or websites or any digital presence. So we're talking about innovation that has been come to terms in the last couple of years. And with just close to around $40-50 million of revenue, they're a $2 billion worth company today. And they were able to scale to this level with just less than 250 people. So business innovation is now being seen as ways through which organizations can scale through new heights. More importantly, when we look at the API maturity over the years, what's obviously known as, hey, this is a mechanism for us to provide access to digital assets and services and data through APIs, over the years has now transformed from just being a technology conversation to where it's enabling business to rethink. So let's take an example. Last couple of years, we saw all flights and air travel being grounded. Majority of the air carriers pretty much had all of their overall revenue coming in through travels all cut down. Come to the level of what one of the Champ or Cargo Smart, they essentially helped open up new business avenues where medical supplies and other things and things needed to be shipped in short span of time, and that required a level of collaboration internally and externally, developers within the organization, partners outside, all coming through where they are leveraging APIs as a means through which new business models are being forged, partnership being created, and getting to market a lot quicker and faster. There are many examples that we see where APIs are really becoming the forefront of now helping and engaging and running business now. But all said and done, everything looked at it needs to be looked at both sides of the equation, which is where all thoughts put together. What are we hearing in terms of how well it's going? Because APIs do scale. APIs do have a large amount of footprint of their own. Left unchecked could have their own set of challenges. So when we look at all the positives of program, we start looking at from a both business perspective of all board level meetings to CXOs, looking at what's our time to market, what's the new revenue stream we are generating, how quickly and efficiently can we do, or all simply put together saying, how can we put this new experience into the hands of our users? And what's obviously seen is when you start off an API program with a handful of services, it's a lot easier. But when you reach a critical point of 100 to few hundred to 1,000 services, you start realizing the amount of time it takes to do the complete iteration of an API lifecycle is getting longer by the day. And that it does have a direct impact in terms of the cost it has in terms of managing and running the API program to the security checks and balances that needs to go along with that. Because you always need to figure out the impact versus risk, which become the underpinning factor for how APIs are even released. We can all brag rights in terms of, hey, Netflix does multiple releases a day, Facebook can do it. Why can't a bank do it? While it's easy said and done, the cost of a failure or an impact to a banking service being down is a lot higher and carries material impact to businesses globally. So this does bring into the part in terms of, is automation really thought through very well? Do we have a single source of truth with which every part of the organization can really work with? And we see this as challenges not in one form or shape. This needs to be looked at if an API program really needs to come together. What's an API program in perfection? So let me bring in David, who has got tons of experience in actually building, running quite a number of API programs to share his perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Rakshith. So let's have a look at the perfect API program. We're going to look at a couple of different bookends here, but imagine the perfect API program. So you're Patrick Bateman, you're talking with other API program managers and you're hearing about their program, and all of a sudden Paul Allen's there and he starts talking about his perfect API program. He's got the beautiful API platform, tasteful API standards, documentation. Geez, he even has monetized APIs. So let's dive into Paul Allen's program a little bit, just to get an understanding about what we hear when we talk about, or when we hear people talk about API programs and what they mean. And you can imagine, Paul, he's the IT executive for this hypothetical company called GrabGetGo. GrabGetGo, they're an online reseller. They do logistics, they resell insurance, but they're fully online. So Paul, it's a Tuesday afternoon. He's decided to go down to the rainforest and build a couch out of the reclaimed timber that he's found lying on the ground after watching 4 hours of primitive technology on a Tuesday. He's got no worries in the world. His team takes care of everything. APIs are getting built and released all the time. APIs are just getting consumed. It's a major revenue driver for his business. As a matter of fact, Paul hasn't even heard of a 500 error. And if he did, he knows his API team will catch that error before it even gets to the client. So we'll go on to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about what actually does the perfect API program look like. And we'll have to click through these a little bit, but there's one gateway to rule them all. So he's only got one gateway in the whole business. He's got a beautiful developer portal. It's fully self-serve. There's detailed reports. It's got great documentation. There's SDKs, Postman scripts. Everything there is just completely full self-serve. The testing of the APIs, it's all fully automated, whether it's penetration testing, performance testing, secure code testing, feature testing, everything is fully automated. The CI/CD tools are fully integrated into the environment. You've got multiple API teams building and releasing APIs at once. They've got an open source program on GitHub, and the community is actively contributing to it and improving the APIs as they go. The time to first hello world with their APIs is less than 30 seconds from when a developer first gets access to the portal to when they first get API keys and start using the API. Monetized APIs are a significant revenue driver for Paul's business. His APIs are all consistent, they're all best practice, they're beautiful, and they're up to date. The whole business gets it. Execs, marketing, sales, product, they all get it. And finally, Paul's here at API Days and he's wearing his t-shirt, "Do you even API, bro?" And he's serious. But that's not really what we see when I'm out there looking at different API programs with businesses. The reality is a little bit different. So here's Paul Allen. He's actually 36 years old. He's got a beard, but that's not because it looks cool and makes him look wise. He just doesn't have time to shave. He's got 4 API gateways that he has to run. He's got no budget for his platform for next year, yet APIs keep on getting thrown on there. He's got 3 different OAuth authentication services and they do the exact same bloody thing. His API standards are published, but they never get followed. He's got 3 people to run those 4 platforms, but he's included in those 3 people as well. He can't get any attention in the business, so he keeps on talking to sales, marketing, product, executives, but no one wants to understand or even talk about APIs. His developer portal uses Comic Sans font, and it's been like that for a year, and he can't do anything about it. And lastly, he's also running SOAP APIs as well. So you can see that the reality that businesses are in is somewhat a mix actually between perfection and I guess this worst case scenario with Paul here. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can always get your program and improve it. And this is that good to great approach. And this is an approach we usually take, whether or not I'm working within a business and employed there or consulting into a business. All API programs can be improved. You could be at either one of those bookend scales, but no one has a perfect API program. But one thing I always recommend is taking this DevOps approach to your program. And so the way we do that is generally looking at the program first, assessing and exploring, okay, what does the program look like today? What are those low-hanging pieces of fruit on the program that we can take and start to look at to improve? Then looking at the design and recommendation phase, you then take those outcomes from that exploration and that assessment and look at, okay, well, what recommendations can I make out of this that I can actually afford? We find that more often than not, there's a lot more improvements that can be made to a program than what can actually be done. But the important thing isn't just stopping and saying, okay, look, we're not going to get any of this done, we can't afford it. It's about looking at the things you can get done and doing this in an iterative way. Of course, building and implementing those improvements is important, but then actually testing and monitoring those improvements is just as important as well. And that's probably a big step that we see that gets missed out of any API program improvement, is actually missing out on that step of actually testing whether or not those improvements have actually made a difference. And then of course there's operating that improvement as well. And this could be improvements to process, could be improvements to documentation, new tools getting integrated, developer platforms getting uplifted. And then it's running through that cycle constantly as well. So it doesn't stop just once. It's usually a regular thing. It could be happening every 6 months or every year. Thanks, Rakshith.
So while David was sharing a lot in terms of specifically having a methodology, it's amazing to see that it's very important for us to start having a mechanism to try this. Because if you look at API as a life cycle, there are various phases all the way from conceptualizing to having a business defining KPI to translating that into a technology requirement that gets translated to a service that gets built and tested, And it goes through a whole bunch of testing in terms of unit testing, integration testing, security-based testing in terms of making sure that there are no holes and everything else before it gets released and automatically published to a developer portal. So if you look at an API lifecycle, the various phases have traditionally been dealt with having a specific technology or an open source tools that can be leveraged for each of these various phases. An approach that APIwiz has taken over the years and built this APIwiz platform is try and provide a single pane of glass because organizations have very short attention span. And as the API program grows, they keep forgetting the releases they did 6, 9 months to a year ago. Coming back to revisiting them to making sure that who has access to what, reducing the API sprawl, removing off zombie APIs, or making sure that everything is well tested and we are not breaking any piece of code as a release, even though it may be 2 developers that are using it that was released a year ago. How do you make sure that they are backward compatible? Because things like those are not often well looked at as part of the API lifecycle. So which is where APIwiz as a platform tries to abstract out the complexity of tools, technology, and gateways and offer a single pane of glass. But just offering a single pane of glass is only problem half solved because the rest of the things is how do you make sure that if you got 3 developers within a team like Paul, or if you got a larger team, how can you automate end-to-end process? Or how do you democratize the ability for everybody to participate as part of DevOps? Which is where the low-code nature of APIwiz platform tries to address these pieces by making sure that you can primarily have the whole API lifecycle taken care of with a fraction of investment in terms of people having to do mundane tasks. You obviously have higher reliability of what's going through the door. You're making sure that security governance and risk are completely taken care of, that you can rest with peace of what's going out is well tested and things are automatically getting generated. You're making sure that risk versus impact is completely taken care of. So a use case specifically around this was with one of the neobank providers in Southeast Asia, which essentially became the very first licensed bank to go have a digital banking license to provide banking services to unbanked. And when they got started, it was essentially about time to market because we always assume that the API sprawl, the program maturity are always specific to larger enterprises, which have been around for decades. But it's a misconception that we don't realize that the maturity is something that builds over a period of time. As an example of that is where we see with Tonic Bank with our 150 plus services built out, essentially did not have confirmation to an open banking model to start with. They did not have a specific way to make sure that all the services are compliant to internal standards set across the organization. As the team grew from 40, 50 people to 300 people, how do you make sure that everybody who are contributing to this are doing exactly the same thing within the guardrails of what the organization wants? So leveraging an approach like this help them bring down the time to market as well as creating an API program through which they can actually go partner with not just other providers, including fintechs as well, to reduce the time to hello world to time to production, which David was talking about. So we see a structured approach in simplifying the lifecycle process, leveraging best practices which are enforced behind the scene, helps reduce the effort and time required for getting higher up in the maturity model, as well as innovating to make sure that you are providing experiences which you want for your consumers at the end of the day, either directly built or packaged and offered through partners.
Yes, I know
That's
we're.
from a tonic pack, but we can talk from a traditional enterprise, which David can walk you through.
And I know we're getting close to out of time, so I'll quickly just touch on the next couple of case studies. But we did have a case study here with Equifax, and we know we had Equifax talk earlier. We had myself, a few others from Sonrai, and Kasna, who are a GCP consultancy company, come in and have a look at Equifax's ANZ program. They had a particular challenge. They've got a large API program, they've got a new API platform and a new set of standards, and what did it take to be able to provide, I guess, that assess, explore, design, recommend, build and implement to uplift that program into a better maturity model. And they actually started off with a pretty good program, but looking at those elements of their program, whether it's tools, developer experience, and we'll keep cycling through this, Rakshith, release management, standards, the operate model, or even the business buy-in as well, you need to look at all of those elements when you're looking at an API program to see what elements need to be improved. And this doesn't really scratch the surface. There's a heap of elements there. But coming out of that, you come up with a list of recommendations which the business does or does not want to fund. And this was a list of recommendations that came out of this case study. And then it's about building and implementing that, and obviously testing, monitoring it, and then operating that from that point forward. And so you can actually boil down, I guess, what ends up being quite a big, unwieldy beast of processes, technology, and people into some finite deliverables that you can implement to improve the program. So let's have a quick look at Telstra. We've actually got Will Fettke here from Telstra, haven't we, Will? Hopefully I don't get sued over this one. But Telstra ran the API program at Telstra for a couple of years. And again, you know, in Telstra, we didn't take that exact same approach, but it was looking at it from an end outcome. Public developer program is what we wanted to implement, but they had an internal developer gateway, internal developer portal, and a set of processes around that. And likewise, for this is about understanding, well, what was that delta between where we want to get to with public, where it is internally, and then building up the case to be able to get there. I think the key points here is do it iteratively. Always do it with a small team. So I always think if it can't be done with a team of 2 to 5 people, it's probably too big. Break it up into smaller chunks till you can do it with 2 to 5 people, and then do the rest in an iterative approach. They're probably my recommendations out of improving API programs. But overall, it is about that people, process and tools, and bringing those 3 things together are key parts of improving API programs. So we'll probably leave it there because I know we've run out of time and I'm probably going to get the run along to the next presentation. So we'll move on to the last slide. I'm not sure if there's any time for questions. Timekeepers?
We're in the break, so there's no one.
We're in the break. Oh, fantastic. We could have kept on going for ages. Well, I've got 10 other case studies to tell you. No, kidding. Let's move on to some Q&A now. Happy to take questions for myself or Rakshith. I will repeat the question as well so the people online can hear too.
Any questions? Feel free to come up to the mic.
You just want to go to your break, don't you? Hungry? Need some caffeine? Oh, we got one.
What's wrong with, actually, so we're building a solution now. We've got an older team and kind of some younger minds sort of thing. One person really
Got a
likes
microphone.
And I'm only saying this because you said the SOAP API comment. But one person really likes SOAP APIs and is really into service buses and whatnot. And so we're doing both. Yep. The solution will have access to both. Your opinion on that?
Well, without knowing, I guess, more details, you know, it can be horses for courses. So I guess the question was, you've got 2 different mindsets, 2 teams, like more of an old school team, service bus and SOAP. Hey, it works. I know what it is. And then the other team is more modern and going, hey, let's do RESTful APIs, that kind of thing. I think a lot of that comes down to what they're comfortable with. This comes down to personal taste and personal flavour. So that older team, it's a bit like me going, you know what, I want to come in and do something in COBOL because, hey, look, I know COBOL and assembly rather than doing it in Node.js or something like that. Of course, both technologies can fulfill the outcome, but you've got to think about what are your consumers of that technology? How are they going to use that technology? How easy is that going to manage? Are you going to hitch your wagon to considerable amounts of technical debt? It's going to be really hard to keep that technology going. At the end of the day, decisions have to be made in the business, and you have to have a decision of which way to go. Without knowing more details, of course, you're probably going to lean more towards doing the RESTful, more modern approach, right? Yeah. But without understanding, I guess, the back ends, what else it's interfacing in, it's probably a bit hard for me to make a call one way or the other. I don't know, Rakshith, if you've got another, any insight on that? SOAP versus REST?
The only thing I would say is, end of the day, they're all APIs. Figure out what's the use case or the consumption of where it's going to be and what business value is it going to be bringing in, because that's the utmost important thing end of the day. And if business needs are being served with one or the other, you don't need to be changing something for the sake of changing. It's more about making sure you're delivering some value. Consuming a soap on a mobile app may be a bit cumbersome, but if it is what it is, then I don't think anybody's stopping you.
And that's an actual problem you've got at the moment? Is that something you're facing at the moment?
Maybe I just feel like it's a little bit of a waste to kind of do both when we've got the opportunity to just do one. And yeah.
Yep.
And literally just because you had that one comment, no one was asking a question.
Yep. Okay. Cool. No worries. Any other questions, guys?
Yep. One more.
Lucky last, I think. Who knows? You mentioned at the start of the presentation about the best API is one that you don't touch, you don't have to worry about, all well and good. Well, entropy is a bit of a thing. APIs will die because the systems that they sit on become vulnerable and become a bit of an issue. So how do you work with that? Because something can't last forever, and we've got this idea that all these APIs will last forever. Like, what's your take on that concern?
So this is about API lifecycle and a question on that APIs will die eventually, and how do you manage that? Is that a fair?
In a way, yeah. Like in the best case scenario, once you make an API, it's all good. We don't have to touch it again. It should just live forever. But the real world says it will die.
The reality is that it will die. It will change. Things will come along. Yep. Rakshith, did you hear that question at all? That this is about API lifecycle. Maybe did you want to tackle that from your perspective first? I'm happy to add my 2 cents as well.
Sure. Maybe I'll share a real-world example. So we have been working with one of the largest banks in the US, and what we realized is, as we started the engagement, just like how you pointed out, APIs have been built over a period of years, and many teams have changed hands. Versions, revisions got built out. So they eventually have to die. When we did an introspection into their whole banking ecosystem, across the bank, they had just short of 40,000 services that are up and running in production. We're not talking about labs. We're not talking about the underlying lower environments. We're talking about services in production, which are consumed by a little over 4,000 applications, both internal and external. See, the most important thing is, at any point in time, just keep a tab or keep a catalog or something like that, because teams will change, people will move on, and services kept in operation over the years amount to a factor of 30 to 40% wastage of resources for any organization. And if it's better served by the next revision or release or things, deprecation should be handled gracefully with at least 1 or 2 revisions down, and you just bring an end of life. You announce them, you let people know, make sure they adapt to the newer versions, give them time, and then slowly bleed them down and deprecate them. Because otherwise, they end up becoming zombie APIs, and you will have no clue of where what is running. And the best thing for every organization is, since it's working, let's not go touch it. We don't want to get fired because we brought on something accidentally in the sake of saving a couple of services or a few dollars. So make sure you have a grasp of what it's being used for and where, and put a plan in place to make sure have at least 2 revisions or versions supported before you can actually deprecate them. Sorry for the long answer, but I hope it helps.
Thanks, Rak, and thanks, Dave. Let's give them a round of applause for their time this afternoon. Thank you, guys. And make sure you grab some afternoon tea before you get on to the final sessions this afternoon. Thank you for your time. And sorry about the technical issues there. Thank you.
Thank you.